Harry's in England, but he's ready to chit-chat about this documentary.
Hello.
Is Harry there?
This is he.
Harry, it's Drew and Mike, WRIF Radio in Detroit.
Hey, how are you?
How are you doing, Harry?
I'm good, thanks. I'm in London.
And are you there promoting your movie?
No, I'm here shooting a pilot for a TV series.
Can you tell us anything about the pilot, or what it's for?
It's for Sky Television, which is a cable satellite system over here, and it may end up eventually in the United States, but otherwise, mum's the word. And I'm also over here because my wife's in a theater show over here, and I need to see her from time to time.
Yeah, I think I understand what that would be partially all about anyway.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty cool. How long you guys been married, Harry?
Oh, my God. It's almost 19 years.
Wow, and you still need to see her from time to time. That's really good.
Still need to see her from time to time. But it's the from time to time part that's important.
Yeah, I hear you. So, I'm glad you've done something with the big uneasy, you call it. We all, of course, refer to it as Katrina, as you point out. We think of it in terms of the hurricane, which really isn't what this is all about. And I guess that's really what the documentary is trying to point out, that this is not really about a hurricane.
Right. It's a little confusing because the two different events happened on the same day. In Mississippi and parts of Alabama, a hurricane smashed into the coast, and to a degree in South Louisiana as well. A hurricane smashed into the coast when it made landfall. A fairly big hurricane, did a lot of hurricane damage, moved out the next day. They could start the cleanup. 100 miles north, when that same hurricane had lost a lot of its ferocity over land, as they do, and moved to the east of New Orleans. The city experienced a little bit of wind damage. There were some tornadoes that spin off of hurricanes that broke some windows.
Sure.
But it experienced flooding over 80% of a metropolitan area, which had never happened. You know, New Orleans has been experiencing hurricanes for almost 3 centuries now. Two eminent scientists looked at this and said, what actually happened here? They both flew down to New Orleans. The early work that they did poking through the mud did not correspond to the official investigation, so they both launched their own independent investigations, one through UC Berkeley and one through LSU. And so the film follows them, and it follows the third person who's a whistleblower inside the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which built the system that catastrophically failed in 2005. She's been part of the building of the new, improved system, and she's got very disturbing news about that system as well.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So Harry, it's really about the crap job, the really poor job, the engineering, the Army Corps of Engineers, and what they could have done and what they didn't do, and how this really caused the damage to New Orleans, rather than the blame that Katrina received.
It's a man-made engineering disaster, not a natural disaster, and therefore, when people, sort of shrug and say, well, what are you going to do, act of God? No, it wasn't. It was a series of mistakes, misjudgments, errors, refusals to heed warnings and orders over a 4.5-decade period under administrations of both political parties by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Wow. And, what we do point out in the film is, as bad as that is, it doesn't just happen in New Orleans. The Corps of Engineers is maybe a little bit worse down there, but they've now given more than 100 American cities notice in the wake of this that, those levee systems that you thought were protecting you that we built or we supervised aren't really as good as we said. Those cities include Sacramento, California, and Dallas, Texas. So it's a national problem.
Well, I know with everyone knows with New Orleans the complexity and the bizarreness of a city that's below sea level, which when this first happened and they used to highlight that so often and mention that so often, it always struck me like, wow, given the amount of hurricane action that occurs in that region, I thought, man, I'm amazed this hasn't happened before. Just the uniqueness of something like that just seems like it's a sitting duck to be flooded out. But then to ask you, did you find in your travels, because I don't know if this was ever true or not, but I remember they were doing a lot of interviews with some of the people within the state government there, and there was talk that the levees also had not received the proper maintenance, that there was a lot of money that was supposed to be targeted at these levees that weren't, and it was squandered in other areas, and this thing.
No, there was.
People knew. I don't know how true that.
that was something else.
Okay.
The levee boards at that time really were, when you say maintenance, their responsibilities were mow the lawns on the levees. So they had some money that was left over, and they went and did things like build marinas and built a little private airport. But the problem is strictly and totally in the hands of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have the sole discretion given them by Congress and the law that Congress ordered this protection system to be built in 1965. The only thing the local and state governments are allowed to do, really, with regard to this system that the Army Corps designed and built, is to help pay for it. So New Orleans was, in fact, aside from the normal federal taxes that they pay, was assessed extra money to pay for its own near destruction.
Well, Harry, it seems to me that they kind of, this really wasn't a big secret over the years that there was some engineering problems, that this wasn't done perfectly. But it seems to me, didn't they bypass many an opportunity to try to correct this, or was it just determined that what it would take to correct this was just more than they could bear to do, and they just try and luck out?
Yeah, let me backtrack to the previous question for one more moment. We do feature in the film Dr. Richard Campanella from Tulane University, who did a lot of work on this and said a couple years after the flood, guess what? Half or more of populated New Orleans is at or above sea level. So when the news media kept drumming on that below sea level, they were half right.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
And the other part of that story is every river port city in the world is at or below sea level by nature.
Sure,
by
sure.
definition.
Makes sense, of course.
At for sure, but the way they would play up the fact of it being below sea level, you just imagine the city way down, if any water left at the beach at all, it was going.
Almost all the coverage, not just from the news media, but virtually every other documentary, I think only Trouble the Water and this one, have been done by outsiders who don't really know New Orleans very well and are, sort of agape at everything they discover about it. Like, oh my God, parallel streets intersect in New Orleans.
Isn't it so typical? The people that didn't know the least are the ones that do all the talking,
Yeah, exactly. Now, sorry, I distracted from the last question, so remind me of what it was.
Yeah, I just was. I just thought that it really wasn't a big secret that there were some engineering misdeeds and that they had chances to correct this.
You had the Corps of Engineers saying right up until the last day, this system first of all, the system was never completed.
Right.
It took 4.5 decades. It was supposed to take maybe 7 years. It took way more money than it was budgeted to take. It was not completed at the time that it failed. But they were always saying, "Oh no, this will work. This is fine." Very, very reassuring. There were a lot of predictions of what would happen to New Orleans if a Category 5 hurricane hit it head on. But Katrina was not a Category 5 hurricane, and it didn't hit New Orleans head on.
Wow. Now, some of these other cities that you're mentioning, that naturally is the first thing that concerned the hell out of me in just reading about your documentary, Harry. And I should mention, we're talking to Harry Shearer. Usually we'll be talking about The Simpsons or something hilarious that Harry's involved in, but this time it's a little more intense. A new documentary, The Big Uneasy, which is playing at the Uptown 8 in Birmingham until the 23rd of June. It sounds very interesting. Because this whole event is something I really think we should hopefully keep in the news. And I know, Harry, you were concerned about getting it done in time for certain anniversaries, and I think you played your cards right. We're so cliche in terms of having the 5-year and the 10-year anniversary type, discoveries, rediscoveries of this sort of event. But what other cities really, really need to be concerned? Because I'm sure they're starting to come to grips with this, or somebody probably is.
Well, yeah, there are city officials in Dallas who are very concerned because the Corps of Engineers told that city a couple of years ago the levees on the Trinity River, which go right through the center of downtown Dallas, are built on sand, which is not what you want levees built out of. Yeah. More serious even is Sacramento, California, which is sources within the Corps speak very in very dire terms about the state of the levee system there. And, of course, this year they've had a record snowpack, and that's going to come melting pretty soon. And that may lead to some unfortunate circumstances. I hope not. I think everybody hopes not. But those are the two cities that have been pinpointed to me as particularly troublesome right now.
Wow. And Harry, how much coverage will this documentary get? Are you finding that this is opening some doors or opening some eyes so far, or are you just finding that out now?
Well, when I go to cities, and I've been going around the country with the film since March, local newspapers, local TV shows, local radio, like you guys, have been very attentive and very good at sort of calling, folks' attention to the fact that the movie, the story of the film. The national media, CBS, NBC, ABC, NPR, have really stayed away from this story for reasons that aren't quite clear to me, but they've really not wanted to bring this to public attention, not felt that this was a newsworthy fact to say, hey, you know what? Back in 2005 when we covered this story, we got pretty much an awful lot of it wrong. It didn't primarily affect poor black people. It flooded 80% of a major metropolitan area. It affected poor black people, middle-class black people, wealthy black people, poor white people, middle-class white people, wealthy white people, Asian folks, Mexican-Americans, Latinos of all sorts. It affected everybody. And, as I say, the sea level thing they got wrong. So in many ways, it may almost be the embarrassment of admitting how wrong they got it that makes them want to stay away from this story.
Why is there so much emphasis on, because that's one of the things I first read was this wasn't something that really just focused on African Americans, or African Americans weren't the only people that suffered.
God, no.
Why was that, or can you at least throw something out there on
I can.
Why do you suppose?
It's one of the simplest biases in modern media. I worked in the news business for a while myself. Let me just paint you a picture. The African-American folks who did not make it out of town tended to be at two locations, the Superdome and the Convention Center, both of which were a 3-minute drive from a major off-ramp of Interstate 10. Lots of places to park your satellite trucks.
Right.
All the 10 miles to the east, there was an entire county, a parish, we call it in New Orleans, of white folks, middle and working class white folks, St. Bernard Parish. Those folks were up on their roofs for 4 days, no food and water. If they had roofs, most of the houses were flooded away. No food and water in 100-degree temperatures. But they weren't anywhere near an interstate off-ramp, so they never got on TV.
Wow. It's got to be annoying to be part of those interest groups and feel that somehow you're not part of this.
Absolutely. And folks all over town think, gee, what about us? There are, mixed neighborhoods all over New Orleans where folks were suffering. But the other thing, as I say, is the media were from out of town, and once they got a little away from the internet, from the interstate, they didn't know their way around. This came to mind when I was in Los Angeles when the city flooded doing a movie, and I saw a guy on CNN on day 2 say, "I'm standing here in the French Quarter," and I said, "No, you're not. You're about a mile away from the French Quarter. And you have nothing more to tell me, sir."
Harry, isn't it funny how simple some of the answers to these questions are?
Yeah. I mean, I think that sometimes we love to play political games, and we love to say it's the left, it's the right, it's this, if it's their fault, it's their fault.
Sure.
And with the media, as with everything else. But as I say, I think a lot of the really profound biases are so simple. They have to do with money, and they have to do with logistics. Where can we park the truck? Well, we're near where we know we don't have to get into as I say, parallel streets intersect in New Orleans. It's kind of, if you don't know your way around, and there's a disaster going on, it's better to I think they thought better to stay where we feel a little safer and feel like we know where we are.
And so many duped, including Kanye West, who on that fundraiser said George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Yeah.
Well, he was watching the news coverage.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if you believe the news coverage, it was all about black people. And if somebody was late in reacting, and everybody was late in reacting, then you would think you might draw the conclusion. I'm not defending Kanye West's comment, but you might draw that conclusion. But if you realize that this was a whole metropolitan area that was going through this, it can't possibly have been just one kind of person.
No, that's
he didn't care about.
true.
He didn't care about everybody.
Yeah,
that's right. And there was failures with the mayor, with Mayor Nagin in Louisiana, with the governor. There were screw-ups all over the place. And I mean, afterwards, when everyone nitpicks it and goes through everything with a fine-tooth comb to show all the buses that were available to try to get people out of there. And of course, we always have these cute little evacuation routes that are well practiced, but in reality, we all know they're going to end up tangled masses of traffic, which is, of course, exactly what happened.
But, in fact, one of the little secrets of that event was that was the most successful mass evacuation in United States history.
Well, I believe that.
90% of a major metropolitan area successfully evacuated within about a 24 to 36-hour time period. One of the complexities of it, not to defend Mayor Nagin because he was a hapless case, but you can't call an evacuation of New Orleans too soon because all the folks south of New Orleans then are trapped. They have no way out.
Right.
You have to let them out first, and then you can evacuate the city.
Yeah.
Well, it's still, in spite of it being one of the more successful evacuations, and it's interesting to hear you say that because that's the first time I've heard anyone call it a successful evacuation. And I guess in those terms, I suppose it is. But it was really an amazing thing to me. I just recall watching that on CNN nonstop. And you were, Mike, we were both watching it.
Oh, nonstop,
And to hear somebody on like the fourth or fifth day, I believe it was, might have been Shep from CNN was talking to somebody.
Yes, I'm sure it was
saying,
Shep.
Aren't you guys watching? Does anybody have any idea what's going on at the convention center? And they really didn't. I mean,
that was the way they behaved. But we have one of the scientists that we feature in the movie, Dr. Ivar Van Heerden, who was then deputy head of the LSU Hurricane Center, has since come up with information that the Corps of Engineers communicated to headquarters in Washington as early as Monday night the scope of the flooding that was then occurring. Why it didn't get from the headquarters of the Corps over to the White House, over to FEMA, over to Homeland Security is a question we don't know the answer to. But he reports that he has evidence that the headquarters of the Corps. I mean, let's be clear. When the flooding started, one of the first things that happened was all communications were killed. Cell phones went, landline phones went, radio was struggling. It was, as we've seen now in Japan, in the wake of however you pronounce that nuclear disaster. That one of the things that happens that we sort of act surprised about, but then in the aftermath you go, of course, is that communications gets cut. And but Corps of Engineers apparently had communications enough to be reporting back to Washington. There was a case of this guy Marty Bahamonde, who was in the convention center, I believe, or in the Superdome, I forget which, who had a communications link back to the Corps and was reporting to them fairly real time as to what was going on and how bad it was. But they had a fairly complete picture by 7 o'clock Monday night, and yet the rest of the administration apparently was still in the dark.
Yeah, the best communication was going on in fact, Drew and I were talking about this the other day with the walkie-talkies going on with some of the looting operations that were they really had it together. They were
orchestrated.
Yeah, they were communicating where the police were and everything else and really doing, in their mind, a marvelous job pilfering the community.
A heck of a job.
Yeah, a heck of a job. I was, too, I used to think at the time with everyone suffering and trying to get the hell out of there and all that misery going on and people just strewn all over the place. I was thinking the best thing for those people to do is follow the news media because they look well-dressed and coiffed out there and fresh.
Yeah, they're getting plenty to eat.
Yeah, they're going to the hotel somehow at the end of their shift,
Yeah, well,
follow those guys.
That I don't think ever was made clear in this welter of stuff that was going on was the vast majority of the deaths that occurred in New Orleans were old people.
Yeah,
of course.
Which makes sense.
People, either people in nursing homes or much more widely, folks, moms and dads and grandfathers and grandmothers. Yeah. New Orleans is a city where it's possible to live without a car, and a lot of those folks, they had their homes. They had a store or a couple of places that they could walk to that were convenient, and they didn't need a car. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a car, and so when things went bad, they didn't have a way out. And if they were poor, they didn't. Even if they could get out, they didn't have any place to go. They didn't have money for hotels. They didn't have money. They didn't have folks, that they could stay with. So
a lot of credit cards.
The folks who got killed.
So brutal to see. I know some of them that end up in the attics, and then with the flooding, they would end up drowning up there. And some of these old folks. I mean, it was just so brutal to see. And
in
of
some
course,
cases, for lack of an axe.
Yeah. But also very impressive as far as all the helicopters that were doing a tremendous job,
the real
pulling people off roofs and everything. Wow.
Was the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
The Coast Guard did amazing work in rescuing.
And you don't hear a lot about the Coast Guard. But, one of the things I wanted to mention about the Big Uneasy, again, now playing at the Uptown 8, is that Harry Shearer, certainly a performer and a talent in your own right. You've done so many things, had to make a pretty tough decision when you got involved in this, and that's to not appear in the documentary because you're so associated with all these funny things. I guess, Harry, were you just too funny to be in this thing?
Well, I'm ultimately decided, thanks to the early audiences that saw it, that I would have to do a little bit of work in the film just to sort of say, and now here's this person, or now here's this part of the story. But I didn't want to distract. I mean, this is a very serious story. It, as we've been discussing, involves people learning that what they thought they knew they didn't know, and I didn't want people sitting there thinking, "Why is this guy from The Simpsons telling me about engineering?"
Right.
So I really wanted to focus the viewer's attention on the people who know what it is that they're talking about.
No, understood, because, Harry, you can be pretty distracting. I love all the things.
Not as distracting as Congressman Weiner, apparently.
It's all over for the congressman. Boy, he took his time, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, he had to gather up his shorts, I guess.
Took a long time for that one to go down.
If it ever did.
Yeah, if it ever did. Yeah.
Well, Harry, we'll definitely be taking a look. The new documentary, The Big Uneasy, now playing at the Uptown 8 in Birmingham till June the 23rd. Sounds like a really educational, interesting thing, and a little maybe outside of your normal zone. But it sounds like you really took a great interest in this.
I'm very passionate about it because I love the city of New Orleans, and I wanted people to really understand what happened there and what could happen to their city too. When you don't punish people for failure, you get more failure.
Harry, thanks a million. We'll look forward to seeing it.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you guys.
Nice talking to you.
You too.
See you, Harry.
God, he's so good.
Oh man, yeah.
He is so funny. It's strange to be talking serious stuff with him, but he's always been a brilliant guy. And he's been involved in some stuff that wasn't necessarily hilarious. Not often, though.
Yeah.
If it's Harry, it's usually pretty damn funny. I don't know. I have had great interest in Katrina. Harry doesn't like people calling it Katrina because it suggests that Katrina did it. But, what else are you going to call it?
Yeah, definitely.
But this was a really fascinating thing that happened within our lives. And it was also such a seminal thing in my mind for the Bush administration. It was just such a, I'll just never forget that. Watching that convention center and the Superdome for 3 or 4 days in a row, and to see our country so impotent, it was unbelievable. Regardless of who you think was at fault, just the fact that, when person A or political entity A failed, wouldn't you think political entity B would jump in? And when political entity B failed, wouldn't you think political entity C would jump in? I mean, for all those people to just sit there, all the resources we have, and having watched tsunamis and other events since then, earthquakes, all these things, and to see the way our troops just mobilize, and they're over there and they're helping, and they're turning the corner on these things, within 24 hours in a country 2,000-3,000 miles away, 4,000, 5,000 miles away, and in our own country, the fact that we were so impotent in this thing, it's horrible yet fascinating to me. How did that happen?
Yeah, and as he said, boy, so much of it was just was communication, no question about that. And I remember.
But how? It was on TV. We were watching it
once it was rolling. Yeah, I remember in the very beginning of it, Shep Smith, who kept constantly reminding us that he's a New Orleans resident. Was absolutely convinced he was going to stay right in that downtown, the town more than I've never been there, but right down in that main section where everybody pops their top and all the hanging
in the French Quarter,
French Quarter, yeah. And he was absolutely convinced that water was not going to end up there. So he was going to broadcast, through this whole thing, from that location. Well, it wasn't long before he was driven the Sam hell out of there.
Yeah.
And this thing, I don't know if it's the fact that it flooded faster and higher and stronger than they could have ever imagined. The breaks were more insane than they ever could have imagined. And then you had it just seems like you had the governor bumping into the mayor, into the this, into the that, and trying to mobilize help over such a vast area with so many people expiring so quick and trying to get out. And man, it was really one big cluster bleep, wasn't it? Really, on a grandiose scale.
Again, it's in Birmingham till June the 23rd. The Big Uneasy, and that was Harry Shearer.